Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. Recruiting new police officers and supporting those already on the job in Pennsylvania remains a constant struggle. That's why the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency backs local agencies as a way to boost hiring and retention. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Lingell. Christina, the Commission has recently awarded more money. Who was the latest recipient and what will it help achieve?
Lock Haven City received $14,000, and that's going towards recruiting 2 new officers. And recruitment in general is the big push in both state and municipal policing. There have been a lot of vacancies, a lot of people retiring from the force, and not as much interest in law enforcement careers. So they've had a really hard time filling those positions. The state set aside funding for 800 new trooper positions in its 24-25 budget, and they hope to add 1,500 total over the next 2 years. So there are more resources in terms of the Pennsylvania State Police in terms of filling those vacancies. The municipal agencies like Lock Haven have the opportunity to get some of this funding through grants to support their needs.
What else do police departments use these grants for?
They use them for equipment, technology, especially right now. A lot of local municipalities are not in compliance with the FBI's National Incident-Based Reporting System. So they can use these grants to upgrade their systems so that they're properly communicating all of their incidents to the FBI. They're also able to, get newer and better vehicles. Well, a big push has been to make sure that all officers have body cams and dashboard cams, which helps them with their overall mission of accountability and transparency and building back trust with the community.
So what other steps has the state taken to help improve policing in Pennsylvania?
So they've done a few things to make it more accessible to become a police officer. One of them is that they passed a bill that lowers the fitness standards for municipal police, so more people were able to apply for those positions. They've also removed the college credit requirement for the Pennsylvania State Police, which has opened the door for a lot of people. And they say that this helps to create more diversity within the police force and helps make it more reflective of the communities that they're serving. Because, college isn't necessarily something that anyone who is going into a law enforcement career would necessarily thrive in or be interested in. They're also building new training facilities because there have been a lot of calls nationally for better police training in order to meet the needs of a changing population and changing technology that's really impacting how crime is committed and how people respond to it.
So this issue invariably leads into the discussion about cop cities. In fact, in Pennsylvania, we are investing in our own version of this. Can you talk a little bit more about what this concept is and why it's controversial?
Cop cities are police training campuses. The term cop city started because of a project in the South River Forest in Atlanta. There were a lot of protests that gained national attention against this facility, specifically because of the environmental impact. Even though the state says this land was an old-growth forest and had been abandoned for a previous prison project, people still would rather see that land conserved. And the protests ultimately led to the death of an activist, Manuel Esteban Paez-Terán. So police in Georgia and the federal government have charged a lot of the protesters there with domestic terrorism and crimes like racketeering. And they said that activists were basically taking things too far, like well beyond their First Amendment rights. On the other side, you have a lot of human rights groups who say that something doesn't add up, and congressional leaders who have expressed concern about the situation. So that in itself in Atlanta is just a whole sticky situation that's at the center of the controversy, but that is what brought the national attention to these projects that are being built all over the country, including the one in Hershey. So there are a lot of imminent concerns for progressives who have kind of been thrown into the camp of extremists. But a lot of the questions are about the land, and they want to see, these are really big facilities. And so they take up a lot of land, and they want to see that land being conserved instead. There's also the culture around these facilities. So within them, they have what are called tactical villages, which are like model towns where they practice both indoor and outdoor responses to emergency situations, and they practice surveillance and things like that. Critics see parallels there to military training grounds. Specifically, they call out Camp Lejeune, which is a Marine training facility, and facilities used by the Israeli Defense Forces, who frequently collaborate with the American police forces on training. So abolitionists who want to shut down the project in Hershey and others like it say this kind of training is indicative of a military mindset. They say the role of domestic police is to protect and to serve, whereas the role of the military is to engage with an adversary. So there's a lot of the same equipment and skill sets being used between police and the military, but they just have concerns about the consequences if the police start to operate more like the military. And you actually do see concerns about that specific issue coming from within the police as well. So even though the big pushback is coming from these abolitionist groups who would probably fall into the more extreme side of the spectrum, the topic does open the door for more nuanced discussion about policing. And I think we're actually seeing some of that within the PSP in terms of efforts to incorporate feedback and also to integrate officers more with services like victim service organizations and social services that they can use to benefit people on the calls they respond to.
Christina, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with this story and more at thecentersquare.com.